Hey, it's Zane here and welcome back. Hope you had a great day, and I want to get into this video today. I want to talk about how we are still very early when it comes to Bitcoin and getting on this life raft. But when I say we're early, we also have to realize that there's no time to waste. Being early doesn't mean that we can procrastinate. It doesn't mean that we can put this on the back burner, learning about Bitcoin and what it can mean for our financial life and our sovereignty. And it's really interesting because today I was listening to an interview with Tony Yazbek of the Bitcoin Way, co-founder of the Bitcoin Way. And I was watching his interview. It was a few months ago now, but I was watching a replay of it on the Coin Stories podcast with Natalie Brunell. And it's really fascinating to listen to Tony speak because he's a really passionate guy. And, you know, he was really emphasizing how there is no time to waste when it comes to Bitcoin, getting your house in order, really understanding what's going on in the global financial system, and how at the flick of a switch, everything can change. And, you know, when you listen to Tony, you realize that having been caught up in the banking crisis that was in Lebanon some years ago, where they essentially closed everybody's accounts, seized their savings, gave them no access to their bank accounts, and it caused a lot of upheaval for a lot of people. And you know, we can't relate to that. Certainly in Australia, that's something that we've never seen before. But when you listen to somebody like Tony, and he talks about how once it was regarded that, you know, Lebanon had one of the most safe, or regarded as one of the most safe banking systems in the world, and then for this to happen really highlights how it can happen to all of us. And it's not until you have a crisis of that magnitude where your credit cards don't work, the ATMs don't work, the banks are shut, there's nobody to take your calls. That's when you have a serious wake-up call and you start to really consider what that could mean for your life. And so, you know, this is about really understanding that Bitcoin represents a lot more than just the ability for us to build a brighter financial future for ourselves. Yes, we know that Bitcoin is the best performing asset for the past decade. We know that for everything that we put into Bitcoin, the opportunity for us to, compound our wealth creation is very, very significant. But for me, the most powerful thing about Bitcoin is the opportunity for us to actually take absolute control of our assets, absolute control of our financial energy, of our property, to be completely portable and sovereign. The fact that not only do we have an asset that nobody can seize, but we have one that nobody can change the rules on, nobody can debase, nobody can corrupt. And so today when I was listening to this interview with Tony, and if you haven't listened to Tony, I'd highly encourage you to tap into one of his interviews. Tony Yazbek, Yazbek, I believe is the way you spell his surname, but you can look him up on YouTube. He's been on a number of interviews lately on big podcasts. But it really does raise the alarm bells for you as to why you really need to be taking Bitcoin very, very seriously if you're not already. And so, yes, we are early, but there's no time to waste. We have just been alerted to the fact that the European ECB, the European central banks, will be releasing the CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, in October this year. And you might say, well, who cares? That's no big deal. But I'm sure if you're tuning into my show regularly, you'll know that I'm just as much about the sovereignty aspect of Bitcoin as I am about the number go up technology. And I think that as Bitcoiners, that is a part that we've got to keep sharing to other people, because most people don't realize that Bitcoin is very different from a stock or a share. It is something that you absolutely own if you take custody of it the way that Bitcoin is meant to be taken ownership of. And a lot of people don't do this, but against the backdrop of central bank digital currencies, which I guess is the brainchild of the World Economic Forum, which Australia very much kowtows to everything that's going on with the World Economic Forum, the centralisation of everything, globalism, the Green New Deal, you name it, we're a part of it. And so we have to be really open to the fact that CBDCs, once they take hold in Europe, there's a really good chance that it's going to happen here. And it may not happen straight away, but if I was a betting man, I'd be suggesting that that we're not far down the line. And it's because of this that we need to be really mindful of the timeline and the fact that things are moving very quickly. I believe this window of opportunity to get on board the Bitcoin life raft and not only acquire Bitcoin at a reasonable price, but also to actually get yourself set up in a way where you are sovereign, I think is a really important point. And, there's just not enough people out there really advocating for this in the Bitcoin space. A lot of people are talking about, how it is the best performing asset and who's acquiring what, the fact that it's fixed supply, the fact that it's deflationary, the fact that it's repricing the world, it's outperforming real estate, all of these things. But we still got to keep remembering that at its core, Bitcoin is decentralized, peer-to-peer value transformation, and the opportunity for us to start being sovereign in a world that is becoming more and more centralized. And so, that's really the point I want to get across to you today, just to remind you how important it is to be thinking about Bitcoin in terms of freedom, in terms of sovereignty, in terms of taking charge of your financial life, and to realize that we are still early. There is less than 5% of the population with any exposure to Bitcoin. I know a lot of people who don't believe that they need to be involved in Bitcoin because they have done very well for themselves financially. But I think a lot of people are going to get a really rude shock when they realize that that a system that is becoming more centralized, Chili's just showed up to say hello. G'day, Chili. There we go. In a system that's becoming more and more centralized, and there is I guess, constant rule changes and threats to property rights, we should be really thinking about how we can start diversifying our financial life. And I can't think of a better way to do that than through Bitcoin because of its decentralization and its opportunity for us to have absolutely portable wealth. And so I think there's a lot of people who are very centralized in terms of their wealth. All of their wealth is plugged into the system, in the stock market, in the share market, under the guise of or the control of the financial planning industry, tied up in expensive real estate. All of these things that historically haven't been an issue, but as we move into this new agenda, this new centralized CBDC, central bank digital currency era, I think is going to be a significant concern for a lot of people. Because what happens when all of a sudden overnight they decide that no longer is cash legal tender, no longer can you use cash, all of a sudden everything that's in the bank is now tied to these central bank digital currencies, tied to your digital ID, tied to your carbon credits, tied to your social credit score. And so all of a sudden, your freedom and everything that you've come to know as just being a normal part of life is all of a sudden at risk. And so when you start to really centralize people's financial lives, you're able to absolutely take control. And so I think it just, this interview I watched with Tony today, and the fact that, just in the past week or so, this announcement from the European Central Bank that they will be rolling out CBDCs. I also heard this morning on another podcast that apparently very wealthy people are leaving the UK in their droves because they can see what's happening in the UK and the tyranny that is starting to take hold there. There's an element of lawlessness going on in the UK, and people don't like what they're seeing. And so those who have assets and have wealth, they're getting out of there as quickly as they possibly can. And, you know, I think there's a lot of optimism out there as to what's going to happen in the US with this new government that recently came in, and President Trump and his policies would suggest that he's all about freedom and giving the power back to the people, which I guess was starting to slip away. But it remains to be seen. You know, he only has one term. It remains to be seen how much he's able to get done in a short period of time, and whether that is able to continue. I certainly hope that it does, and that has a ripple effect into Australia, into New Zealand, into the UK. But it remains to be seen. And I just think we're at a time now where we have to be really open-minded about what it is that we can do to protect ourselves, to protect our financial future, everything that we've worked hard to acquire, and to make smart decisions. And I think that the more decentralized we are in our life, the better off that we're going to be. And so, yes, we are early. We are on the adoption curve about 1999 as far as the internet goes. So if you think about Bitcoin and where we are now, compare it to the internet 1999, it would be like, say, buying Amazon shares in 1999, or buying shares in Apple in 2006 before the iPhone came out. That's where we are on the financial adoption curve. And so we know that the value proposition of Bitcoin is going to continue to escalate because it is absolutely scarce, fixed supply digital property. But I'm just asking you to also consider the sovereignty aspect of it, and to not discount how important that side of it is. And so it's not just about acquiring Bitcoin, but it's also about securing it and storing it, and just remembering that it is portable, transportable, incorruptible, unconfiscatable wealth, and it is also multi-generational wealth, and you have to think of it in those terms. So I hope that makes some sense. We are early, but there's no time to waste. There's a lot of factors at play right now that we have to be aware of if freedom and sovereignty is important. And I would just say that if you know anybody in your world who is still on zero when it comes to Bitcoin, zero Satoshis, zero Bitcoin, zero fractions of a Bitcoin, just remember that people can get involved at any level. You don't have to acquire one whole Bitcoin to be involved in Bitcoin, to be a Bitcoiner, to be a Bitcoin advocate, to be somebody who's out there sharing the benefits of this sovereign money with others. And it doesn't mean that you have to get on YouTube and do videos like I'm doing, but certainly just sharing in your inner circle and kind of alerting people to what this actually is. And what's interesting, when you think about the adoption curve and the fact that less than 5% of the population have any Bitcoin, all you need to do is just ask 5 family members or 5 of your closest friends or workmates or work colleagues, what they know about Bitcoin. And I think you'll find that very few, if any, know anything about it. And yes, they may have heard of it, but the reality is that unless they've done 20, 30, 40 hours study on it, read a book, listened to some long-form podcasts, studied a little bit about the history of money, the reality is that most people know very little about it still. And so there's really an opportunity for us to not only educate ourselves, but educate those who are important to us. And I'm certainly going to keep spreading the word, and I hope you do that within your circle of influence as well. So I'm going to leave it there today, but just remember, we are early, but there's no time to waste. So much to learn in the Bitcoin space, but just keep it simple. Just remember that even if you're already in Bitcoin and you're on your journey, just keep learning, keep building your knowledge base, your conviction, tap into different people in this space who have their own perspective, who have different skill sets. And I highly encourage you to tune into what the guys are doing at the Bitcoin Way. Check out what they're doing. Tune into some interviews that Tony Yazbek has done recently, and he'll give you another side of Bitcoin that you may not be tuned into, and he'll really hit home for you just how important it is to be taking the sovereignty and freedom aspect of Bitcoin as seriously as the wealth creation aspect of it. So I'm going to leave it there today. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you got some value, some insight. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. If you have, I want to thank you for joining the community. And please feel free to leave a comment if you feel like doing that. Other than that, I want to thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. This is Zane signing out. Bye for now.